So today is April 1st, 2024. We are Shabbat Parshat Shmini. This is also Parshat Chodesh this week. We have these special Shabbatot before Pesach. And because this Shabbat precedes the new moon of Nisan, we will be adding a different Torah reading. But that Torah reading from Parshat Bo is something that we've looked at before. Of course, there's lots to look at it, but I want to focus on Shmini. There's so much to talk about in this parsha. I'll tell you what I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about the rules against priests uh, and intoxicating beverages, and I'm going to set that aside. I'm not going to talk about the kashrut rules, which is chapter 11, the menu of prohibited and permitted foods, animals to eat. Those that chapter is, of course, worthy of long discussion. But I'm currently inclined to ceremonial things and questions that are hidden in the details. I like to find the story in the details that's not necessarily on the surface of the text, and and try and piece together based on what the text is saying and what others have said about it, um, to 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 discover, I think, a deeper truth or another drama, another story, at least to put it out there. Um, I'm always inspired by the infinite possible interpretations of a given text, and that, I think, is the joy of study. The joy that we all share is that we all see different things. There's no one single way to see the text, notwithstanding the fact that there are people who from time to time will tell you that this is the only way to understand it, that you should only understand it as my way, especially my way. I can't say that I ever fall into that. Never. I never fall into that. So with that, let me begin with this text. Here it is. Um, the eighth day. So in order to set this up properly, we have Aaron and the priests are getting ready to inaugurate the sanctuary. The other thing I'm not going to talk about is the catastrophe on this day, which is the death of Nadav and Avihu, happens on this day. We have 7 days that they're sequestered in the tabernacle in the holy area, and now we're on the eighth day. And the eighth day itself is significant because the eighth day is the beginning of everything else, which is similar to why this number 8 is important. Let's say, for example, on a Brit Milah, or it's important in the holiday of Sukkot and having the eighth day. And there are many other examples of where the eighth is really the important thing. So here is the eighth day, which is the beginning of the rest of their lives. And this is the day when everything has been complete in terms of the sequestration of the priests. They're ready. The sanctuary is ready to be inaugurated. And so it's going to call for a series of rituals, mostly sacrificial rituals, but also some kind of benediction rituals, which we will see at the end of this. And specifically, and I'm just going to put this out there just as a kind of hook, the benediction of Aaron, and then Aaron and Moses together. So here it is, Vayihi bayom hashmini. It's on the eighth day. Moshe called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. So everybody gets their call here. And he said to Aaron, Kach lecha, take yourself, a calf, a young of the herd, as a chatat offering, and a ram as an offering up, tmimim, holy sound, v'akrev lifnei Adonai. So you're going to take a calf and a ram. And to the children of Israel, you are to speak, saying, take a hairy one of the goat for a chatat offering, and a calf, and a lamb, year-old ones, holy sound as an offering up, and an ox and a ram as a shalom offering to sacrifice before the presence of God, and a grain griff mixed with oil, for today God will make himself seen by you. Okay? So I'm going to stop here for a second and just to say we're getting a set of instructions about a ceremony that's a sacrificial ceremony. Okay? And that we have to, and I'll have a picture of this in a moment, but we have the picture of the tabernacle and a lot of people surrounding the tabernacle, and the main players inside the tabernacle with Aaron at the base or at the ramp of the altar, which is a very large platform, and it's and things are going to come up to the platform. Okay, I give you that as a kind of mental picture because these things are it's very far from us. I would want to understand, and this is new in my own understanding of these texts, which is that the altar is essentially a fire pit that is enclosed with a structure. It's a kind of square structure with a that's enclosing a fire, and on top of that structure, the ceiling of it is a kind of grating, like a barbecue grating, and the priests are able to stand on it or to poke things at it and to manipulate what's going on. And the offerings are brought up to this fire pit, a large fire pit, and essentially incinerated there. And that is worship, and that would have been understandable to our ancestors in a way that we do not. We simply do not understand that. This is a language and a ritual vocabulary that is very distant from us, and which I don't want to get into too much right now. Only is to say that there's a spectacle going on here. The spectacle is that animals are being slaughtered, that blood is being brought. Animals they're then skinned and cut into pieces. Certain parts of them are burnt first, and certain parts of them are burnt afterwards. The skin and other parts are taken out of it, and then the whole animal is incinerated. And you know, we're going to kind of hold back our judgment on this. That God likes this, doesn't like this. We're going to go back to this. Those are not parts of my conversation right now. What I want to say is that this had symbolic meaning to our ancestors in a way that I think is very difficult for us to access. But it speaks a certain language. Go ahead, Nanette. Go ahead. You have a question.
Yeah. So, hey, Rabbi, is there any correlation between the sacrifices and today, currently, uh, the donations, the money donations? Because obviously we don't sacrifice animals currently, but we do give donations. Is
So I would
there?
say yes. I would say the answer is that sacrifice comes from a deeply rooted human instinct. It's a very good point that you know the idea of giving something up. I wrote this in my sheet last week, and it's a line that is meant to catch attention, which is we do get a tremendous amount of self-worth or worthiness or honor or meaning out of giving something of ourselves. And my example that I go to, and you've heard me say this before in any number of contexts, is that if your child or a loved one needed a kidney and you were the match, I don't think it would take much more than a split second for someone to say, I'll do that, because the sense of I'm giving up something to save another person is the worthiest thing that you could do. Okay, so we use that language of sacrifice. I will go have my kidney removed so that it can be transplanted in someone else's body at the risk to my own health, notwithstanding the fact that you can certainly live with one kidney. But most of us don't do this. Most of us are not live donors, and are not willing to sacrifice. I know people who have, uh, and and um, and then in order for another person to live, it saves a person's life. We could even take it one notch further and say, well, people are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the sake of others, and that, of course, is seen constantly in emergency personnel, and of course in war. This is what we are witnessing now, and this language of korban, sacrifice, is the language that is being used when we describe the soldiers who are killed in battle. It's a sacrifice for the nation so that people can live, right? And when you watch interviews of soldiers who've come back from battle, they say, I'm willing to give all, I'm willing to give my life in order that in order that my children and my grandchildren will be able to live. And of course, I'm referring specifically to Israel now. uh, the sacrifice that has been given now by 600 soldiers. Today they reached the 600th casualty. It is enormous sacrifice in terms of lives and families and everybody connected to these people. Um, and it's on the sense of on the on the basis of that sacrifice that the people lives. Now, how we understand these sacrifices, is it, substitution or not? I mean, there's a whole mechanism around it, and it's very, very difficult to understand. I think, every year as we reach this, I learn more and more about this, and still do not feel as confident as I should in terms of trying to really understand the symbolism of each and every one of them. Notwithstanding that, I'm going to go show you now the menu, the menu of these sacrifices here. So here's the context. The eighth day of the ceremony, Moses is speaking to Aaron, the sons of Aaron, the elders, and here's the menu. Okay, this is what Aaron has to sacrifice on his own behalf: a calf and a ram. Okay, and I tried to get the artificial intelligence illustrator to draw this for me. I wrote, I said, please make me a picture of one calf and one ram. You know how stupid artificial intelligence is? They made me a hybrid calf and ram, one animal. I try and I explained it. I want one picture of two separate animals. It didn't understand what I was trying to say. Okay, so you get a calf, and so now you have to imagine this: one calf and one ram, and these function in two different ways. And that is to say, they're two different. There's two different vocabularies going on here: the chatat, which is atonement, and the olah, which is a kind of preparation, the preparation for everything. The olah is the most significant sacrifice. Okay, if you recall, Isaac was to be sacrificed as an olah, a completely burnt offering. There's one other basic offering. Well, there's a few more, but there's the chatat, the olah, and the shlamim. The shlamim is a peace offering, and these are offerings that are consumed by the donors as well. Okay, the chatat is eaten by priests. The olah is not consumed by anybody. It's totally burned. But a zevach hashlamim, the best example, let me just stop this for a second. The best example of a peace offering, I would consider the Paschal offering, since we are coming up to Passover. The Paschal offering is a type of peace offering because you essentially bring it to your altar. In the case of the Israelites in Egypt, they didn't have an altar. They made their own homes into an altar. They consecrated their homes by placing blood on the altar, on their corners of their doorpost, and they roasted their lamb, but they ate the lamb. That's different from roasting it and burning it completely, or roasting it and eating it partially. Okay, so there's completely burnt, partially eaten, and totally eaten. Okay, a shlamim is a totally eaten, which means a shlamim is a feast. It's you're going to enjoy it, whereas the other ones are more solemn. And so here you have a menu of, Aaron, and Aaron has a chatat, which is partially eaten by the priests, and he has an olah, which is not eaten, and the people get an olah, completely burnt offering, a chatat, which is only eaten by the priest, and a shlamim, something that they themselves can eat too. Okay, so you're following. That's the menu. Okay, that's the barbecue menu of the eighth day celebration. Okay, and a grain offering. They get some matzah with it as well, with oil. So if you thought that when you went to a restaurant and you dip bread in oil, that is new, no, it's an ancient menu. Okay, we go on. So they took what Moshe had commanded to the front of the tent of appointment, and the entire community came near and stood before the presence of God. So they took the whole bunch of animals, and now he brings the community to watch, and it's a spectacle. And that I'm trying to do this frame by frame to understand that there's emotion here, there's excitement here, there's enthusiasm here, there's anticipation here. It's a spectacle, and it's not that there's an arena around here, but there's something going on the stage in front of them. And if you can imagine, of course they don't have this, but I'm imagining this, that if people could see in, like if they were, like an arena around them, they'd be watching the whole spectacle in front of them. Okay, I'll give you just an example of this, in terms of ceremony. All right. So, Christians have just celebrated their Easter. There's a lot of that in Easter. I don't know the Easter ceremony in the Catholic Church especially, uh, but there are times where people are spectators to ritual. I'll hold off on my example. I'll get Marlene in a second. Go ahead, Marlene.
When you showed what the people had, was that a compilation of all of each person had to bring his own, or
No,
did the priest have one for all of the people?
it's a collective offering. It's like I'm doing it on behalf of everybody. Okay,
But
you
he's not
get.
having this massive barbecue. He's coming.
Exactly. However, and I'm glad you asked that, when Solomon does this in kind of the analogous moment, he throws, I mean, it's like the greatest feast ever. Hundred thousands and thousands and thousands of animals. It's really mind-boggling in terms of the quantities of animal that were used in these things, and people ate it. People had, them to eat. So this
My
is not,
second,
yeah,
I'm sorry, my second question has to do with the fact that it called for the elders of the community and not the chieftains.
was kanim, okay? It's the
So that
Hebrew word.
the old people learn as they go along, but it wasn't that they were the chief, they weren't in charge. Is there some?
It's a good point. These are elites. These, this is the an elite class here, and it's different from the political elite. Uh, you know, it's worth kind of looking into as to whether or not these Zikanim were also tribal leaders, but the Nasi that's a specific term for the tribal leader. And the Nesi'im will appear later on in the book of Numbers when they each bring their own gifts to the sanctuary. This Kenim, this is reminiscent of the people that were kind of in between Moses and the people on Mount Sinai. And I think that's quite deliberate. And just to give you this kind of footnote parentheses, which is that there's something going on here. The thing that is going on here is that within the priestly system, we are trying to create a portable Sinai. And so in the creation of a portable Sinai, we're going to have the top of the mountain equivalent to the Holy of Holies, where only Moses can go. And the rest of the places, the priests are going to go, the elders were, and the people collectively were in the courtyard, and the people were at the base of the mountain. So the mountain is in 3 dimensions with the top and the middle and the bottom. And the sanctuary is essentially in 2 dimensions with the center, the surrounding orbit, and then the outside orbit. And so what you have is a 3-dimensional scheme really compressed into 2 dimensions. And the elders and the Levites, priesthood, really are the analogous participants here. That's what's going on. Okay. All right. So then we go on. We have the animals and the spectacle. So I just have this picture here. Okay, this is a kind of mini model of priests, and you could see the Holy of Holies. This is the sanctuary in use. Okay, I need you to imagine that there's no smoke yet here, and there's no fire yet here. That these things are kind of fresh. They're everything's been anointed. They've been sprinkled with the anointing oil, and they're ready to go. And what inaugurates them is the bringing of the sacrifices. Okay, so and the people would be outside the court. I mean, and this looks like a very small area. It probably was. I mean, this is probably a little too small, but there wasn't enough room for everybody, and they're basically standing, and if they're able to see in, they're going to see something in. They're going to hear things, although there is a bit of silence going on, and this we need to appreciate more and more, that the sanctuary has very little spoken in it, but there's a lot of gesture, and the noise that they would have heard would have been things like the blowing blasts of shofars for the sacrifices, and also the crackle of fire, and perhaps the braying of animals at various moments, either pre their slaughter. Okay, I can't imagine that it was a completely silent scene. And then we have the following. Vayomer Moshe, Moses said, "This is the word that God has commanded that you do, that the glory of God may be seen by you." So back here, okay, again, imagine that there's nothing going on, and it's ready. The sense is a sense of anticipation. We're doing this so that God would appear. Now, we just have to kind of, rewind a little bit, because they built this. I'm just going to close the screen for a second. They built the sanctuary, and when they built the sanctuary, made a big deal out of the fact that Moses couldn't get in the sanctuary because the presence of God was filled with there. There was a big cloud inside. But evidently, that has lifted, okay? And there's now a kind of moment where they want a very contained presence of God in there. God's not present there yet, as it were. And they are going to perform these rituals in order to, it's literally an ignition. It's really, I don't know any other way to describe it. And that's exactly what has to happen. The thing has to kind of get, you take your Bic lighter and it lights, okay? And if you live in antiquity, you don't have a Bic lighter, okay? To start fire requires a certain kind of ingenuity, a certain set of skills, and even a little bit of what we would call technology, whether it's geology, right? Knowing how to make a spark by crashing flint on one another, or knowing how to rub a stick together, knowing how to, I know that Sheldon is on here somewhere, but we have there's certain scouting techniques to making fire. Okay, any of us who have had to find our way in the wilderness and create a fire either for warmth or for cooking, there are certain skills, and obviously some of those skills were available in antiquity, namely the stone, the flint, and rubbing sticks together, creating smoke. I doubt they had magnification kinds of lenses, but you never know. You never know. I mean, this is something that we used to play as kids with. Of course, we didn't play with matches, God forbid, right? But now, it's all made simple by having a match or having a lighter or having a flame or having some kind of sparking device. Okay, any one of you who has a barbecue knows that this is, not a terribly complicated thing. But in the absence of a electronic or electric sparker, it is a complicated thing. Go ahead, Susie.
Is it that maybe they had like this little burning ember somewhere?
So the thing I'm stuck on here is while there is language in this chapter that he turned it into smoke prior to the quote unquote we have ignition, right? I love that when you used to watch the Saturn V rockets, launch to the moon back in the day, right? So it was 10, 9, 8, 7. We have ignition, 5, 4. So ignition was a moment, right? That you saw the engines flame, right? And what was ignition? Well, the ignition was it happened. I doubt it was the astronaut in the capsule that pressed the button. It was mission control that activated something, and they set off the ignition, and the thing then, at zero, it leaves the platform, but you have ignition before that. It's I should have used that as a good video illustration of this class. Okay, but so it's possible that they have a pilot light somewhere. But then again, for this to work in the kind of mystical, religious, spiritual sphere that I think it's working in, there is no pilot here. And what they need is what they're trying to do here is bring it down from heaven. This is a little moment where it comes close to religion and magic, which is we are doing things to elicit God's presence and to spark it. And the idea is that the fire that is set on this day will be continually in operation forever, okay? Such that any subsequent offering will be burned with fire that continues from the first fire. Okay. Any of you who have a fireplace, who've enjoyed fireplaces in your life, you understand this, and we don't have to explain this. Okay. But what does it mean to keep the fire going? Okay. Now you could keep the fire going for a number of hours without having to add wood to the fire. But when the fire goes down, if you don't add wood to the fire will go out and you'll have to start it again. So for the sake of religious continuity, the fire needs to be guarded, and it needs to be guarded from elements, and it needs to be guarded so that it won't go out, and so that there's always, always, always a a part of this fire that is linked to the first ignition. I'll give you an example in the secular world and in the symbolic world. Many countries have an eternal flame going, all right, an eternal flame of remembrance. I know in the House of in the Parliament buildings in Ottawa, there is an eternal flame. Okay, there's a fountain, and there's a flame coming out of the fountain, and it's a flame of remembrance and a flame of whatever. Okay, and it's an eternal flame. It's on constantly, except sometimes you can go, as I've been, you can go on a tour and the eternal flame is out. Why is it out? It's out because they have to maintain the thing. They have to clean out the basin. They have to water. There's problems. There's maintenance that goes on. So is it eternal or not? It's obviously symbolic. Well, in the religious sphere, eternal means eternal. You have to keep it going all the time, whether or not there's maintenance. Okay. And because the people depends on the presence of God. I'll give you another example from a religious realm. Okay. We've all been to the Western Wall. Okay. And the Western Wall, you would think, that there's a mythology around it in every sense of that word, that the Western Wall, there's always someone present at the Western Wall praying. The Western Wall is never alone. If you go there any time of the day or night, there'll always be someone there. And that's been my experience. And to a certain extent, I think it's true. But from time to time, they have to clean it out, right? And from time to time, they have to secure the wall in order to, have if an important guest is coming, if the president's coming or whatever, you just can't have, little Hasidim in the wall. Like the Secret Service is not going to let that happen. Okay, sorry, right? So they clear it out, or twice a year, they actually clean out all the notes from the wall. They just kind of they scrub it down, they clean it out, and they take the notes and they bury them. They bury them in a geniza. Okay. And this is part of the regular maintenance. The point is that eternity comes with a footnote. Okay. You have to have practicalities there. But as I said, what's so important here is that the flame has to last forever. Okay, let's go on. Document 23. Not here. This one here. Okay. So what's the main goal of all these sacrifices? That the glory of God may be seen by you. Okay. Moses, then we go on to the text, and then we're going to run through this series of texts. Moses said to Aaron, come near to the altar and make your chatat offering, your offering up, be effecting atonement on behalf of yourself and behalf of the people. Make the near offering of the people effecting atonement for their behalf, as God has commanded. So they have to do a kapara before everything, okay? Atonement. Aaron came near to the altar, slaughtered the calf, etc. Then the sons of Aaron brought near the blood to him. He dipped his finger in the blood, placed it on the horns of the altar. The remaining blood he poured on the foundation of the altar. This is an altar, a picture of an altar. The altar has corners. In this picture, the altar, they literally look like horns. They probably didn't look like that. They were just the edges of the altar. And what you did in order to consecrate it is, and here I have to appreciate that our ancestors were somewhat practical, okay, in the sense that you can't take gallons and gallons of blood and pour it over every square inch of the altar. First of all, it's going to make ignition really difficult. And second of all, you can get away with doing the corners in order to effectuate the whole thing, okay? And so they do it on the corners in order to consecrate the whole thing. And this is very similar to other acts of consecration. The other acts of consecration are when we consecrate the priests. We saw a little of that last week. They are to take a little bit of blood and put it on their earlobe, on their thumb, and on their right toe, big toe. Why? Okay. So you can say, I don't know, which is a good answer. Okay. Or you can offer a speculation, which is a person has corners. Okay. Quote, you have extremities. And by doing your earlobe, your thumb, and your toe, you're symbolically saying, I'm consecrating myself through the purification or the consecration by act of blood, which is the consecrating element on the extremities, and that will stand in for the whole. And then I even make the extension to Passover. I'll close the screen for a second, because one of the things that we say at Passover is that they were to take the blood of the sheep and put the blood on the doorposts. Why? So that God would protect them. But this is very subtle, okay? And I think it's very clever to say it this way. By doing so, they not only make themselves visible, so to speak, they not only have this kind of protective, element, but they sanctify, they consecrate the home so that the home itself becomes enclosed as a kind of altar. If we just kind of replace the image of an altar as a kind of box with a barbecue on it, and say that we are inside an altar, okay, instead of the altar being something outside of us, then what the symbolic language of this is profound. We are now consecrating our home. Our home is an altar. We are enclosed inside the altar, and in the hearth of the home, in the center of the home, that is where this animal is going to be roasted, and then we will be able to consume it. Now, to the extent that happens, and how one does that with fire and smoke, I think we have to kind of set aside. I you know, I I'm very, very cautious about open flames in my own home. Okay, based on the fire experience of our community. Okay, but our ancestors were not obsessive about these things. Fire, you had fire in the home, and you can roast things in the home, and if the home filled up with smoke, well, then you step outside and breathe, but then you go back inside, basically. Okay, it'll dissipate. The point is that your home becomes a kind of altar. Okay, so that's the corners of the altars. Nanette, you have your question.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, wait a second. Didn't we all learn, or didn't you say that any place, any Jewish place, we can make sacred, just the sukkah, just by doing, I guess, rituals? So,
Yes.
but right now, the way you're talking, it sounds to me that it can only happen during Pesach.
No, no. What I'm saying is that there's a wide vocabulary. I'm using the word vocabulary of symbolic consecrating rituals. Okay, one, I mean, forget the Bible. We like to say that if you sit down and study the Torah, what you've done is you've consecrated the space, you've made it holy. If you recite a bracha, it's a consecrated moment. You can go anywhere and make it. That's part of a language, okay? But here I'm talking about a very specific moment that is consecrated. Now, I'm also talking about a very specific place, which is the sanctuary, which in order to be used has to be, consecrated. Okay, we can't use this unless we. And it responds to a deep human feeling. There's an impulse, and the impulse is, I think, anytime you purchase a new thing, okay, whether it's a pot, a knife, or a television, or a computer, or anything new, there is this moment, okay, that is the opening, the moment of first, turning it on. We now have this experience regularly with technology, okay? It's become a kind of joyful moment when you upgrade to a new computer. Happens to most of us every 6 or so years, if you're lucky, okay? And if you're not lucky, you have to do this on a much more frequent basis when things break. So there's and the companies, especially Apple, they've built this into the whole culture, which is coming to the store and you talk to someone and you get this beautiful package and it comes out of the package and you open the seal and all of that has there's a ritual dynamic to it. The seal, the opening of it, the crispness of it, the newness of it, the exhilaration of it, and you almost want to make a bracha that it comes out, okay? And those are religious feelings. I mean, I don't know, I haven't bought a new car in a long, long time. The same is true that you drive the car off the lot, it's yours, it's a feeling. Or, purchasing a new for I guess some of us it would be a new suit, okay? If you get a new suit, it doesn't happen too often because this is not cheap, they're expensive. But if you get a new suit and you go to the tailor and it's been altered and you finally, put it on at the store and it's all ready, and then, you take it home and you put it on for the first time, you actually are supposed to say a bracha shechianu on it. It's consecrated. It's a consecrated moment. The only thing you don't say a bracha on is shoes, right? Because leather shoes, that is to say, because you don't want to say a bracha when there has been the taking of an animal life. Aside from that, these are joyous moments. Okay, Ruth, go ahead.
You actually don't have to spend a lot of money to have this feeling of newness and stuff like that. Like Pesach is coming, right? Okay. So there's stuff you buy for Pesach that you get all the time. Like this happens to me every year. A bag of sugar. You start a new bag of sugar for Pesach. You open the bag of sugar, and somehow it feels like a shehechi.
Well, okay, and that's a perfect example. I'm thank you for mentioning it because I think built into the experience, at least the modern contemporary experience of Pesach is experience of newness in the sense of packages of these kinds of things. Now, technically speaking, do you need or whatever? Leave that aside. I think for most people, that's part of the anthropology of the holiday. I've cleaned everything out, and I've covered, or and I use my once a year dishes, and I'm going to go and get a new package of this, an unopened package of this, and everything has a kind of newness to it, and that's built into the feeling is built into the experience. Okay, all right, let's go on. So there's this, and so then they do all the things that they're supposed to do, slaughtering, offering. I'm not going to read through this. Okay, brought near on near offering. He's doing it all. Okay, and turns into smoke. It slaughters it. The fat parts, the breasts, etc., etc. And now the big moment. Okay. Vayisaron et yadav el ha'am vayivarchem vayered ma'asot hachatat va'olav hashlamim. I love this verse because there's a little drama here. Okay, he holds up his hands, he blesses them as he is coming down, or then he comes down. There's a whole discussion among the commentators, in the Zapruder film of this moment, right? What does he do first? Does he come down and bless? Does he blessing from the? It's the commentators go wild here. He's done a chatat, an olah, and a shlamim, the basic categories, okay? And he's done a blessing. Why is he doing a blessing? Okay, and what has up until now not happened yet? We do not have ignition yet, okay? But we have Aaron, and we have this moment, and this is a moment that's meaningful, where this leader is going to do something. He's going to perhaps even say something, and he's going to involve the people. And this, I have to say, this is a reason why we kind of love Aaron, or at least the tradition expresses its admiration for Aaron. Aaron is a people person. Aaron is the one who's connected to the people, and he understands that I mean, here I have to think of the brilliance of this, because he's got all these people waiting. He's got all these people watching. He's got all these people in an arena around him, and they're not bored, but they're anxious, okay? And he's got to find a way to involve them. He's got to find a way for them to feel honored, to feel validated. And to do that, and he's got to find a way to communicate to them, this is yours. This is your sanctuary. It's not my sanctuary, it's your sanctuary. And the only way that he can do that is by offering a blessing. Now, the rabbis are going to explain or ask the question, the obvious question, well, what does he say? What is he going to say here? And what's their obvious answer? What do you think they answer? And if Aaron is blessing them, what is he blessing them with? Spock, right? Live long and prosper. He's doing a Birkat Kohanim, okay? Now, is he doing this? It's really not clear. It's really not clear whether or not he's offering the blessing. I'll tell you why, okay? And this is why it helps to read things very closely, okay? So he's alone. I want to know how he lifts his hands. And what is he saying? What's the purpose? So here's a picture of a Kohen, okay? So I took this off the internet. The Christian sites, they love this stuff. The Jewish sites, they don't like doing this, okay? But look at his hands. I'm going to make this larger, okay? So they have his hands raised up this way, okay? And that actually is something that as at least as far as the literature I read, that's a universal pose, okay? And it's a universal pose. And here's another picture. This is the Miriam's Well panel in the Synagogue of Dura Europos. This is a very important archaeological tapestry somewhere in Syria. And look at all the people here. I'm going to try and make it as big as possible. I'm sorry for the resolution here, but they're all standing, and they have their arms are up. They're in a supplication mode, okay? And you know, it's very interesting. We can't overanalyze this, but for the sake of this class, let us. Which is to say, I'm going to stop here for a second. There are various postures in prayer. Okay, let me make my spotlight here. Okay, and I will pin myself for spotlight you for. So I'll stand up. Okay, and I'm going to daven for you. Okay, so I can daven like this, right? And I don't think anybody would be offended or uncomfortable with this kind of posture. In fact, you know, from time to time, there are people in shul that daven this way, and there are people that daven this way, and there are people that daven this way, and you know, their hands are. People don't daven this way, okay? They don't. They just don't do it this way. But the Kohanim do it this way. They do it this way because halacha for blessing has evolved in such a way that you are to do it face to face. This is at least according to the Talmud and the Rambam. I have those sources, but I don't have time to look at them. And he's saying you do the Kohanim are to face the congregation and do this. But here's the thing. Aaron, it says, Vaisad Yadav, and he's doing the same thing that Solomon does when Solomon blesses the people also. Now, would he have done this? I don't know. I don't think so. He's probably doing this, okay? And why is this interesting? I'm sorry to say it just is. It's interesting. It's interesting to me to kind of, you know, to stand back and to watch this and to say, Okay, so there's a way to stand, and I guess what's deeply interesting is that we are all doing a kind of imitative activity when we ourselves pray, which gives you the theological conclusion, which is that when I stand in supplication like this, I'm also offering a blessing to everybody else around me. Okay, that would be my little sermon on this. Okay, go ahead, Marlene. I'm going to just stop my. Go ahead.
When your hands are open this way, you're communicating with God,
Yes.
with something other than the people to whom you're speaking. You lay your hands on your children on Shabbat. So the different place of your hands, when we get to the Ashrei and we say, Poteach et yadecha, we don't put our hands up like this. We put them out so that
Right.
it
So
depends on who you're talking to.
I would say that there are a variety of postures, and in my opinion, go for it. They're all acceptable postures. Who's to say that this is right? All I would say is that it makes sense when Kohanim are doing the blessings, that they do it the way that it's always been done, which is it doesn't make sense for it to go like this towards me. It doesn't make sense for it to go like this, but it certainly makes sense that they're putting it on, and that there's a sense that they're putting on. Now, it's interesting, I had this experience. I had away last week, and I dip into certain things. So I've never taken a Tai Chi class or a Chi, whatever it is. So I took one. Okay, fascinating. I enjoyed it so much. Okay, it's all about movement, and it's all about energy. Okay, and if you go into the Eastern traditions, from what my little thumbnail knowledge now, okay, they understand that there's energy. Okay, so one of the exercises was you do your movement and you feel chi, you feel your energy, and you place your hands. If you place, when you're energized, you will actually feel something. Now, it's body heat, okay, maybe, but there's also an energy. There's an energy force, all right. And the next time you have the opportunity to be next to another person, all right, and you want to experiment this, place your hands up to the other person's hands like this, and just kind of center yourself and see if what you feel, okay. Now, it could be that you're just throwing off body heat, okay? But it could be that there's something going on. There's an energy, okay? You don't have to watch too much Star Trek to get this, okay? That he places his hand on the head, and that, I mean, the deep significance of that is I'm just connecting with you, okay? Is there an energy transference? Who knows, okay? But something is happening, and it could be at the very, very least just human touch. A human being touches another human being, and there is a sense of energy, there's a sense of communication, there's a sense of feeling, there's a pulsation, and there's a response, okay? And we may have experienced this more during the pandemic than we do now, thank God, but there were probably weeks upon weeks upon weeks in which people did not experience the proximity, the physical proximity, in the most tactile ways, hugging each other, touching each other, holding each other's hand, putting each other, we were so afraid of this. And to a certain extent, we're left with this kind of vestigial fear of touching another human being, coming into the proximity of another. We've paid a huge price for this because we're afraid of the germs, certainly, but the fear has gotten us away from the energy of human contact. Okay, and the last part of this is so this is what there's the whole discussion about this. Aaron faced the people. His hands, of course, were raised. That's Jacob Milgram, the eminent commentator on Leviticus. Is this the priestly blessing? The Talmud says so, or maybe it's another blessing like Solomon. This is Solomon's blessing here. I'm just going to Vayamod Vayavarech et kol kal Yisrael. He stood and in a loud voice blessed the whole congregation and said, Baruch Adonai Asher natan menucha le'amo Yisrael. Praise be God who has granted a haven for Israel. This is what Solomon's blessing is not, may God bless you and keep you. It's, here's my blessing to you. Da, 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 da. You know, may the eternal be with us. May God, our hearts be inclined. And may these words which I've offered in supplication before, and may you be wholehearted. That's a blessing. I'm giving, as they say in Orthodox circles, I'm giving over to you a blessing. I'm giving over. I'm giving over. I love the way it's now part of an English language. I give over to you, to give over a Dvar Torah. Okay? The Ramban. Nonetheless, I could stay that the rabbis were saying as follows: the blessing which Aaron blessed the people of his own accord. He is unspecified. He's saying, no, you're making it all up. You say, it's not the priestly blessing. It's not Solomon's blessing. He made it up. He made it up on the spot. Okay, and the scripture doesn't say what it is. But the blessing that the priests have been commanded to say in all future generations has been expressly set forth, etc., etc., etc. Our point, and then this is the final moment, which we've run out of time for, but I'm going to use it anyways. ויבוא משה ואהרון אל המועד, ויצאו, ויברכו את העם, וירא כבוד Adonai על כל העם. Now Moses and Aaron had entered the tent of appointment. They came out and they blessed the people, and the glory of God was seen by the people. What's the story? Okay. The story is, first Aaron goes in and blesses, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. Okay. So Moses comes in, and then there's a blessing, and then God's presence appears. Okay, this gives rise to a lovely midrash, which we don't have time to go into, which is that Aaron's activity doesn't ignite the sanctuary. Why? Because Aaron has a strike against his name. Aaron was the one that caused the golden calf. So Moses has to come in and help him out. That's the midrash. I think it's a gorgeous midrash. It's a gorgeous explanation of what's going on. It's like Aaron is saying, and this is in Rashi. Rashi quotes this on his comment on this verse. He's saying, you know, I guess I really made a mistake, and it's not happening. So Moses repairs it. Okay, there's a drama going on there. Okay, so that's one layer of it. Another layer of it, another interpretation is that Moses is instructing Aaron what to do. Moses is being the teacher. Don't forget that Aaron is the older brother. Okay, Moses is the youngest brother. So there's something going on here that Aaron can't achieve what he needs to achieve. He needs the assistance of Moses. But I like this interpretation kind of the best, okay? I'm not saying that it is the best, I'm just saying that I like it. And what I like of it is the following. They quote from the verse in Ecclesiastes. This is in Ecclesiastes Rabbah, a midrash, Tovim hashnayim min ha'echad. Two are better than one, okay? You know, if you listen to the Pugi, Sipurei Pugi, it's part of that song, Yoya. Tovim hashnayim min ha'echad. Two are better than one, but they pun on that. Okay, so here he's saying two are better than one. This is Moses and Aaron. Min ha'echad, zeh latzmo v'zeh latzmo. This one did it alone, and that one did it alone. That's what Aaron went in alone and didn't accomplish it. At motzeh, you find Sheba Moshe uverach et Yisrael lo sharta shechina al yado uchsheba'u shnehem. The God's presence didn't come until both of them were together. Because it says, Moses and Aaron, came to the tent of meeting, they emerged and blessed the people. Veyira kavod Adonai shata shchina al yadehem. They blessed Israel, and then the glory of the Lord appeared. The divine presence rested there. What that means then is that you don't accomplish it alone. You need the team, right? Now, of course, there are times when Moses works alone. Okay, right? I'm reminded of the comedian Modi. Sometimes someone heckles him in the audience, and his answer to the heckler is, "I work alone. I work alone." Okay, and if you ever watched the movie The Incredibles, right? You know, they all want to get up with Mr. Incredible, but he says, "I work alone. I work alone." And it's important to work alone, but it's even more important sometimes when it really matters to work in a team. Okay, and just as your own experiment, think about the great comedy duos that you may be familiar with, like Abbott and Costello, or in their day, Martin and Lewis. Now, and others that you could think of. Okay, what made them great was they worked off each other. They played on each other's strengths, and they compensated for each other's weaknesses. And the repartee would create the tension and resolution that is impossible only as a soloist. Okay, it's not saying that solo comedians aren't wonderful and excellent, but there's a whole new dynamic that emerges. If you think about the classic skit, "Who's on First?" Why does that work? It works because it's about frustration and resolution and question and misunderstanding and the timing of all of that. And you can't have the joy of the repartee without the second person. Okay, there's just no way you can do this alone. Okay, so some blessings work alone, and some blessings can't work alone. And so my little homily on this is not that it's tovim ashnai me'achad. That's lovely, okay. And in a sense, it's the same homily, which is the reason why two people are better than one is because there are two sides to this team, right? Moses is the God part, and Aaron is the people part. And you know what? In this moment, you really need both. Now we'll go to Bob. Go ahead, and then Susie.
So I just wanted to say, I wanted to expand on what you were saying and perhaps give a different perspective on this. Rather than thinking of ignition as a particular point in time, why not think of it as a process? And so the 7 days prior to this, Moses is doing all of the action. He's in the process, then he turns it over to Aaron and his sons. And then also the Brazilian playwright Augusto Boal said that people are not spectators, but are spectators. And I'm thinking that in fact, the people are as much a part of the ignition process through bringing in the sacrifices and the offerings, and that in the end, when Moses is coming back, it's not so much the two of them doing it, but he started it, he's not really discussed, and then he closes it off because he reconnects. And so the whole question is, all of the people sort of participating in these different offerings. One of the things I read, which was interesting in the Mincha offering, from this interpretation, was this was an opportunity for people who were less well off,
Right,
or
that's
even
right.
people,
Yeah,
some with oil and some without oil, and they are still part of it. And
indeed.
Aaron's coming down is back to what you said about the small m, the
Right.
mem, and the other is the humility of connecting with the people. So instead of a rocket launch, maybe it's also like the Indianapolis 500, start
Yeah,
your
sure.
engines, and everyone is starting to go together in this rather than just from a priestly perspective. So that's a democratized view.
Well, I want to say that this is all on a spectrum, okay? And if you there, Abram Joshua Heschel in his book God in Search of Man actually devotes a chapter or part of a chapter to this whole discussion of process versus event, okay? And when he talks about process versus event, he's really kind of giving a criticism of the philosopher Mordechai Kaplan, who's talking when he presents a kind of picture of the world. He's saying It's a process of unfolding. And what Heschel said is, well, maybe, except things did happen in events. Sinai is an event. Sinai is not a process. Now, you may think Sinai is a process because Sinai continually unfolds, and all of that we can accept. But there is one Sinai, and there's one moment. Now, the having one moment, there's this is why it would be kind of uncomfortable for some, which is because one moment means that there are things that are they're hierarchical. There are things that are more important than others. That one Sinai moment is a pinnacle moment, and that everything else is subsidiary to that. And I would say here, and this, of course, I'm relying on Jacob Milgram, who, you read too much of this, you go crazy. So he says basically like this: what the priests are trying to do, they're trying to recreate the Sinai experience, and that the ignition is the revelation. That to the priests, what the kindling is, and that happens right in the next moment. But the fire comes out. That's their Sinai moment. They want that moment, and the whole system has to work because there is a hierarchy. There's only one Sinai, and everything else comes after it. And there's only one Sinai because there's only one God. And process means that there's everything. Now I understand why we would be inclined to thinking of things as a process, because we want to see the divine moment in it. I think the idea of pride, Kaplan understood this. It speaks to a modern sensibility, which is why it kind of catches a certain part of the imagination. Susie, go ahead.
Yeah. So now that you've said that, there's something else comes to mind. So with Eliyahu, when the fire, he pours water over that altar,
Yes.
the fire comes. So he's kind of reenacting a Sinai moment because he's
Sure.
calling on
Sure.
God. But in terms of, in the world of music, sometimes solos are good, but you
Yes.
can't have an open fifth with only one voice.
You can't have an open fifth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, an open fifth is a very nice harmony that you
Right. Okay. So
can't.
and the duet, or the reason why we have ensembles, but also the reason why you have duets, and it's the same thing. The duet is because they're harmonizing, and they're working off each other, and they're compensating for each other, and they're blending, and the joy that the audience gets from that is based on the resolution of this kind of dramatic tension. Okay. Anybody else with anything? So you can see the reason why I brought this is because this is a moment, and again, like everything in the Torah, we kind of, just speed through this. And so many important elements are happening when you just kind of take it frame by frame by frame and ask, well, what's going on here? And what appeals to me, I'll go back and I leave this, is that um, the moment that it starts has to be a moment of partnership, and the moment of partnership is reflected in the brotherly relationship between Aaron and Moses. And I try to just have the kind of exercise, the imaginative exercise, which is, where am I in this? Okay, I'm in the audience. I'm watching this. What does it do to me to see the two of them up there working together? Well, I like it. Okay, and think about this, in any context, which is, take the political context, which we obviously don't like to do often, but at an inauguration ceremony, okay, of a president, what happens? The president gets the oath of office and gives an address, but the photos are of the president, and then the two of them, the president and the vice president. And the sense of the team up there gives a different kind of reassurance to the people that this is not a solo. This is not the solo performance. I think this is kind of unusual in the American I don't know enough about other contexts where there's a second person, a vice president. It's in Canada, you don't have a vice, there are people who are deputy prime ministers, okay, but they're not up there on the stage at the same time. And that probably tells you that, where the traditions lie here. What you do get though is you'll get immediately after a new government is sworn in, the cabinet picture, that has become a ceremonial moment where the whole cabinet is sworn in, capped off by the prime minister, and then the cabinet together has its group photo, which signifies we're a team, and then the prime minister will give a kind of speech. Bob.
I did want to say one thing that I'd heard, which was very interesting. You mentioned the defect in Aaron, and one of the interpretations was that because he had that defect, he was the perfect person to
Okay.
be the Kohen Gadol, because he could then understand and empathize with the people who were involved with the sin of the golden calf. Much like, and it's not an exact analogy, people who've had, for example, drug addiction, or people who have been through sexual abuse and then become counselors later, they understand that experience often, that they can help more. And so what they were talking about was the ceremony, your barbecue, back to the barbecue, that it related to the sin of the golden calf, but the goat related to, in fact, the brothers, taking the coat and dipping it in goat's blood,
Yes,
and that
nice.
was a
Okay.
rectification. And
Yes.
as you mentioned with Yitzhak, with the ram,
Ram,
their
yes.
merit, so that each of those animals were symbolizing past events. Now, whether the priests knew that or the people knew that, I would defer to what the commentators say, but that's
Right.
an interesting take on the meaning.
Well, I just to add to that is that, again, this back to this notion of vocabulary, that for whatever reason, all of these animals kind of do key into either different narratives or different symbolic meaning. And I've often tried to kind of make that leap. How does the system work? The system works because each of these things is connected to some kind of story. The ram being a good one. The ram is the substitution for Isaac. Okay, and in order for the ram, why is a ram given such a prominent place in the hierarchy of sacrifices? Well, that was what Abraham used to substitute for Isaac. And since that was the pinnacle of transformation in the whole system, that's why it's there, I think, as opposed to an ox, which is just there because of its grotesque size, and as opposed to cows, which are there because they also are quite large, right? They offer a lot of meat and blood, etc. But we don't want to end on that. We end on brotherly love. That the two brothers are there. HINE MAH TOV u'manaim shevet achim gam yachad. They're not sinning. They're dwelling together. And I really, really believe that a leitmotif, a strong signal here is, here we've worked out our sibling problems. If two siblings can be together, they will be there for that one pinnacle moment. Unfortunately, it all ends in catastrophe. That in the very next scene, it has a catastrophic moment, and the brothers go on a collision path. But at least for this moment, when they're blessed, everybody's together. And at least this moment, even though we're all apart, we're all together. And I love that. Everyone, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week. Next week is one of our favorite parshas, Tazria. Okay.
And it's the day of the eclipse.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about that. Okay. Have a good week. See you. Bye-bye.